We got a good one for you today. Coming up, we're counting down the top 5 songs that stirred up so much controversy. For the most part, the artists themselves that created these songs won't perform them live anymore. Got some great stories here from a legendary group who actually came out and apologized years later when they all got married, to one of rock's greatest riffs that, due to some lyrics, now will never be heard live again, to one song the singer calls hideous and creepy. We've got her in an interview, and I had to bleep out certain words on one of these because this platform would ban it. These songs were so controversial, most of these creators just won't touch them anymore. Find out which songs made the list and the stories behind this taboo status coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you had a blacklight poster or several growing up, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the big red button and then click the notification bell so you always know when our daily features and interviews come out. Also, check us out on Patreon and our merch below. I'm wearing my new jersey that I got. Actually, a good friend of mine, Lawrence Durchie, made this for me. It's actually even got the Professor logo right on the side here. It says the Professor and has my lucky number on the back, 54. Someday I'll have to tell you why that's my lucky number or my number. So the other day, I'm listening to music and the #1 hit, Brown Sugar by the Stones, came on my playlist. Man, I love Keith Richards' riff on that song. And it spawned my thinking about songs that were so big in their day, but now are considered just too controversial to play. So I started going down this rabbit hole, and I want to talk about some of these infamous songs. So this is my top 5 songs that are now taboo. Let's talk about it. Coming in at number 5, So Walk on the Wild Side was Lou Reed's provocative tell about the New York City underground and, you know, some of his colorful characters.
He was a she says, hey babe, take a walk on the wild side.
That one charted in 1973. But before that, in 1970, it was the Kinks that released perhaps the most famous song about a man dressing up as a woman when they released Lola. Kinks leader Ray Davies wrote Lola after he watched the band's manager Robert Weiss get plastered at a nightclub, I think it was in Paris, and he started dancing with what he thought was an alluring blonde-haired woman. Ray and the rest of the band noticed the woman that he was dancing with had some stubble, and the manager was just too slap happy to notice. So to him, the dancing partner was a fantasy come true. But I can't understand why she walked like a woman but talked like. Now, Ray recalled that they all left the club. They went to Robert's apartment, and Robert was still hanging on to this woman that he had been dancing with at the club. When they got to the flat, Robert pulled Ray aside, all excited, telling Ray that he thought he was onto something with this woman. So at this point, he didn't say anything, and they continued to party until around 6 a.m. And when Ray Davies went to leave, he actually pointed out the facial hair to Robert. Did you notice that stubble? Richard, still inebriated, just didn't care or didn't understand. The crazy night, it inspired Ray Davies to write a song where the narrator expresses his confusion about the girl he's attracted to, a girl who walked like a woman but talked like a man. But despite the uncertainty, he finds himself captivated by her. Ray stated that the woman's name was not really Lola. He didn't remember ever actually hearing her name. He chose Lola because it fit into a clever sing-along rhyme with the la 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 Lola chorus. The character of Lola was based on the transgender who was partying with his manager, but ultimately the song was inspired by the various drag queens that the band encountered during their late-night adventures in underground clubs. You know, Ray talked about a guy he and the band knew named Michael McGrath. Apparently, McGrath used to hang out with him a lot. Being called the Kinks seemed to attract different characters. He'd show up at the Top of the Pops, and he worked as a publicist for John Stevens' shop on Carnaby Street. McGrath had a place in Earl's Court and would always invite Ray to these drag queen shows. Lola is a love song, but of course the twist is that the person the narrator falls for is not a woman but a man. Wasn't their fault, just happened. In the end, the couple knows, once the truth comes out, that the relationship isn't going to last. The Kinks came up with the riff while, they were just messing around with open strings on their guitars. It came to life through a clever mix of two distinct instruments, a Martin acoustic guitar and a vintage Dobro resonator. Ray explained that this blend is what gave the track, its unique standout guitar sound, adding a textured warmth that helped shape the song's signature style. Dave Davies, the band's guitarist, felt he deserved a songwriting credit for it, which only added, of course, to the tension between he and his brother Ray. Ray got sole credit for the song. Now, at first, Ray had a tough time crafting the perfect opening to really bring in the listeners, to hook them. But once he got past that, the rest of the song just flowed naturally. He did have a moment of clarity about its potential when he heard his 1-year-old daughter crawling around, happily humming the chorus, La 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 Lola. And that's when it clicked for him. He knew it was going to be big. He said, she can sing along, and Kink fans are going to love it. So Lola marked a big comeback for the Kinks in America, where they hadn't had a top 40 hit since Sunday Afternoon. It's clear back in '66. Their first U.S. tour in '65 had been a disaster. They butted heads with their promoter, played to small crowds, and often cut their sets short. Their behavior became so difficult that the American Federation of Musicians refused to give them work permits, essentially banning them from the States until 1969. Now, by the time Lola came out, most Americans hadn't heard of the Kinks in years. But the song took off, and this time they were finally able to promote it properly. Lola was a monster hit. It climbed to the top of the pop charts in virtually every country in Europe, along with South Africa. Single rose to number 2 in the UK and number 9 here in America. When Lola came out, of course, it sparked a lot of controversy. Ray Davies weighed in on the debate, stating, and I quote, "Really doesn't matter what sex Lola is. I think she's all right." Some radio stations, however, chose to fade the song out before it revealed any implications about Lola's biological sex. Interestingly enough, the BBC had its own reason for banning Lola, and it had nothing to do with Lola. In the original stereo recording, the lyrics included the phrase Coca-Cola. However, due to the BBC radio's strict policy against product placement, Ray Davies found himself in a bit of a pickle. On June 3rd, 1970, he had to make a grueling 6,000-mile road trip flight from New York to London and back, all while interrupting the band's American tour just to change those lyrics to Cherry Cola, for the single release. Today, there's no doubt the PC police would have something to say about this song, even though it actually isn't meant to be discriminatory at all. It's true. You think about it, Lola paved the way for artists like Lou Reed and David Bowie to delve into themes of gender fluidity in their music, resonating with rock fans across the spectrum regardless of their persuasion. So there's that.
Drink champagne and it tastes just like cherry cola.
So coming in at number 4, this is a strange one. It's Pat Benatar's Hit Me With Your Best Shot, a track that was really her signature song for decades. However, as time went on, she began to dislike what she felt the song implied, and she's since removed it from her live performance set list and will never perform it again. So sometimes when we're feeling particularly confident or like we have nothing to lose, seems like we can take on anything that life throws our way. Now that's the spirit captured by Eddie Schwartz, who is a struggling guitarist from Toronto, the author of Hit Me With Your Best Shot. So Eddie tells the story that during his mid-20s, he was in this unconventional therapy called bioenergetics. One of the exercises involved punching pillows to release pent-up hostility. After one session where they spent some time doing just that, Eddie found it all really kind of odd. But as he stepped outside and stood on the doorstep of the small house where the therapy took place, a title came into his head. It just popped in there. Hit Me With Your Best Shot. That moment marked the end of his time with the weird therapy sessions, but it sparked a song that would resonate with many for many years.
Why don't you hit me with your best shot?
Eddie sent a demo tape featuring 4 songs to ATV. Hit Me With Your Best Shot was the final track on it. They were impressed enough to sign him and flew him out to LA to record some of his songs and pitch him to various artists. Now, of all the tracks on the tape, Eddie was most excited about Hit Me With Your Best Shot, but ATV didn't share that enthusiasm. He said, that was my introduction to the music business. Took weeks to convince them to give it a shot. Once we finally did a demo, they hated it so much, they actually erased the master recordings. What was supposed to be a few weeks in LA, though, turned into months due to the constant back and forth about Hit Me With Your Best Shot. Feeling dejected on the verge of returning to Toronto, Eddie was just bummed that his favorite song, something he knew was going to be a hit, had been recorded and then just wiped away. On the last night he was there, the engineer John Rise invited him to dinner to lift his spirits. During the meal, John slipped Eddie a little cassette and said, "They told me to erase the song, and I had to because they're my biggest client, but I made a copy for you because I know how much you love it." Very cool. So when Eddie got back to Toronto, ATV had just hired a new guy named Marv Goodman, and he was still wrapping up his time at Chrysalis. As he listened to the material he'd be working with at ATV, Eddie sent him Hit Me With Your Best Shot. And sure enough, Marv loved it. He kept playing it on repeat. Now the story goes that Pat Benatar was actually next door. She heard it through the wall, got excited about it. That's how she discovered Hit Me With Your Best Shot and ended up recording it.
Best shot, fire away.
Became one of her biggest hits. It established her as the female rock vocalist of the 80s. It was actually the third single released from her sophomore LP, Crimes of Passion, and Hit Me With Your Best Shot became her first gold record. It sold over 1 million copies. In Canada, it moved to number 7, and here it peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100.
Come on with it, come on, you don't fight fair.
Now, if you think about it, the song was originally written from a male perspective, from Eddie's perspective, with the line, "Before I put another notch in your lipstick case." When male bands cover it, they sometimes switch it to "put another notch in my guitar case." Now, for her version, Benatar made just one change. She altered "your" to "my."
Me, before I put another notch in my lipstick case.
Pat was proud of the song for a long time, but as time went on, her opinion of the song changed. Actually, in 1984, she had an interesting conversation in an interview about Hit Me With Your Best Shot. When asked about whether she stands behind the lyrics she sings, she explained, "There are very few songs where I let the lyrics slide. Sometimes I do if the rest of the song is solid, but most of the time I'm really picky about the lyrics because I have to sing them. With Hit Me With Your Best Shot, there were parts I liked, but a lot of it I've kind of outgrown. I mean, it's tough to sing lines like 'You're a real tough cookie.'"
You're a real tough cookie with a long history.
Her fans, us, we love Hit Me With Your Best Shot. I do. But eventually, Pat and her husband, Neil Giraldo, they disregarded the popularity of the song. Out of respect for the victims of mass shootings, Pat Benatar made the decision to drop Hit Me With Your Best Shot from her set list altogether. She did this interview with USA Today where she explained that the band, her band has what they call the Holy 14, songs that fans expect to hear at every single show. And of course, her 1980 power pop hit, Hit Me With Your Best Shot, is usually a part of that group. However, starting with their 2022 national tour, they no longer play Hit Me With Your Best Shot. Pat Dooley noted fans were freaking out. She apologized, but only because it disappointed her fans. I guess she felt a moral obligation to dump it out of respect for, like I said, victims and families of mass shootings. She says, "I'm not singing it." And she explained that how she responds to fans upset about the song's removal from her live shows. She said, "I tell them, if you want to hear it, go home and listen to it. The title might be tongue-in-cheek, but there's a line I just can't cross. I can't sing those words with a smile anymore. It just doesn't feel right." What's strange is I've heard this song 1,000 times over the years, and I've never once thought of that lyric in that way. What about you? Let me know in the comments. Coming in at number 3, we got a song that feminists absolutely hate. I'm talking about a song that got under a lot of people's skin back in the day, and the band will not touch it anymore. Girls by the Beastie Boys.
Girls, all I really want is girls.
Technically, the 8th single from the trio's debut album, Licensed to Ill, in 1987. And Girls, Adam Adrock Horowitz, he unleashed his wild, playful desires over a driving drum beat and a vibraphone loop. with moments of space that let the energy breathe. The song took shape during a train ride to Washington, D.C., where ad rock and producer Rick Rubin sketched out the idea. In a 2013 interview with Newsweek, Rubin reflected on their creative process, saying, "We started with the concept of what the song could be. It was actually inspired by the Isley Brothers' Shout. We thought, what would a rap version of Shout sound like? And if you listen to it, you'll hear the similarities."
Throw my hands up and talk, throw my head back and talk, come on now. And in the morning it's girls, 'cause in the evening it's...
Now, the early days of the Beastie Boys were drenched in share of misogyny, right? It wasn't really subtle. Songs like Girls were pretty sexist, but they were also par for the course on the group's first album. Their live shows back then leaned into that vibe pretty hard as well. You had women dancing in cages on stage and even a giant hydraulic penis as part of the spectacle. The chorus of Girls was difficult to defend against the critics who called the Beasties misogynist. Girls to do the dishes, girls to clean up my room, girls to do the laundry, girls and in the bathroom, girls. That's all I really want is girls, right?
To clean up my room, to do the laundry, and in the bathroom.
But the sexism didn't stop at the music or the performances. Behind the scenes, it was just as bad. When the band shifted from their punk roots to a more hip-hop sound, they pushed out drummer Kate Schellenbach. Why? Well, apparently she didn't fit the new bro-centric image that they were going for. That's what some people say. But you know what? Then something unexpected happened. The Beastie Boys started hearing all the criticism about their misogyny and homophobia, and instead of brushing it off, they actually listened. They listened to the critique, and they changed. Sexist lyrics disappeared from their music altogether. By 1994, MCA even delivered a public apology for their past behavior in the song Sure Shot. It was a clear sign that the Beastie Boys were changing.
That's all I really want is girls.
It's possible that the Beastie Boys started taking women and themselves a lot more seriously in the mid-90s because that's when all of them got married. Well, they met the women that they would eventually marry. In the documentary, the punk singer, Ad Rock even credits his relationship with Bikini Kill's Kathleen Hanna as a turning point for the band's awakening.
2 at a time I want girls. With new wave hairdos.
There was a scene where Ad Rock talks about the guilt he felt rapping lines like "Girls do my laundry," while the woman he wanted to marry was out there printing riot girl signs. That kind of realization hit hard, and it clearly played a role in the band's shift in perspective.
I ought to whip out my girls.
So another song on our list of the top 5 socially taboo songs, actually our number 2 spot, is one that the band would not perform live for a very long time. It's All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You by Heart. In the liner notes for The Road Home, Anna Wilson didn't hold back about Heart's feelings toward this song. She explained, and I quote, "We'd actually sworn off it because it represented everything we were trying to move away from." Now, the track was actually written by Mutt Lange, who they liked, but it was originally meant for Don Henley. It's interesting. At the time, though, there was a lot of pressure on them to record this song. Anne's been vocal about her dislike for the song over the years, even calling its message hideous. So here's what she told me about it.
I love Heart, but I hate that song.
Yeah.
Probably just like you do.
Brother, I love Heart. I hate that
What the
song
heck
too.
is going on? But I love how years later, you guys were going to put it back in the set and you're starting to sing it and you're like, I'm not doing this.
Nah.
Tell me that story.
The thing about All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You is that I'm no prude. I'm not a Victorian woman or,
Right.
or a prudish woman about where
Yep.
sexuality is concerned. But when you took those words that were written to be sung by a man about casual sex with a hitchhiker,
I didn't ask him his name.
and you flip the gender,
Right.
it took on, it was shocking to be sure,
Right.
but for me, it took on a grossness,
A creepiness.
a creepiness. Yeah.
Right.
So what surprises Anne is how many fans, especially in Australia and Canada, still want to hear this live when Heart performs. It was the lead single from Heart's 10th studio album, Brigade. It was indeed immensely popular in Australia and Canada. Both places it hit number 1. It just missed the top of the pop charts here, went to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and on the mainstream rock chart. But in a strange twist, Anne started performing it again. I guess she's come to grips with it. So our number 1 pick, and the reason it's number 1, because I think this is truly one of the greatest riffs in rock and roll history. It's really sad that we won't ever hear it live again. It's a rock staple by one of the biggest bands of the entire rock era. It was the number 1 single on the Billboard Hot 100 for 2 weeks. It was number 2 in the UK, and it's been consistently played during their live concerts for 48 consecutive years before the Rolling Stones made the decision to stop performing Brown Sugar. So in early December of 1969, the Stones made their way to the legendary Muscle Shoals Sound Studio in Alabama. Over the course of just a few days, they laid down tracks that would become rock and roll standards like Wild Horses and You Gotta Move, and of course the infamous Brown Sugar. The band at that time was really tight. The music was nearly complete, but there was just one thing missing: lyrics for Brown Sugar. Enter Mick Jagger, cool as ever. So according to session pianist Jim Dickinson, it was truly a moment to remember. He said, and I quote, "You can't imagine how nonchalantly Mick Jagger wrote that. The music was ready, but the words not yet. Grabbing a green steno pad, Jagger sat down and casually began scribbling. 45 minutes later, he had filled 3 pages. It was unbelievable. Without hesitation, Jagger stood up, he walked to the mic and belted out the song's iconic lyrics, sealing its place in rock history just like that quickly. What started as a blank page had turned into one of the Stones' most controversial yet defining tracks, all in under an hour. All happened. Wrote it, sang it, recorded it. Jim Dickinson couldn't help but marvel at Mick Jagger's sharp ear for the southern slang that floated around Muscle Shoals Sound Studio. In just a short time, Mick soaked up the local lingo like a sponge, weaving it effortlessly into his lyrics. One line in particular caught Dickinson's attention, Mick's reference to a Skydog slaver. The first verse of Brown Sugar, according to Dickinson, Skydog was the nickname everyone at the studio had given to a young Dwayne Allman. Of course, the 22-year-old guitar prodigy who'd been working there that summer with the likes of Boz Scaggs and Lulu. The fate of that first verse, whether it remained in its original form or was altered during vocal overdubs, still carries a bit of a mystery. But it's that same verse that would eventually spark controversy years later, bringing Mick Jagger's lyrics under the spotlight of modern scrutiny. The song's first verse paints a vivid and unsettling picture when it says, "Gold Coast slave ship bound for cotton fields, sold in the market down in New Orleans. Scarred old slaver knows he's doing all right. Hear him whip the women just around midnight." Now those lyrics set a stark tone, drawing from dark and painful chapters of history. What was once just a raw, unapologetic line in Brown Sugar became really a lightning rod for criticism, reflecting a shift in cultural sensitivity. Pressure mounted, and in the face of growing discomfort with the song's themes, the Rolling Stones made a decision that once seemed unthinkable. They stopped playing it live at all. The track, once a rebellious sexual anthem, found itself at odds with the times. Actually, in a 1995 interview with Rolling Stone magazine, Mick said, and I quote, "I didn't think about it at the time. I never would write that song now." Last time the Stones performed Brown Sugar was in Miami, Florida on August 30th, 2019. It was actually the final date of their North American tour. Man, it's just too bad that Mick wrote that line, because it's one of the greatest riffs in rock history. We'll never hear it again. Well, there you have it. That wraps up our countdown of the top 5 taboo songs that even the artists themselves refuse to play or touch anymore, save for a couple there. Heart. Whether we agree with the court of public opinion or not, I mean, we can still enjoy these tracks on our own. Just because parts of our society or even the artists who made them have distanced themselves, that doesn't mean that we can't listen to them from a historical perspective and appreciate them from different perspectives, especially the music of these songs. I'm a lyrics guy myself, but I have a lot of friends who don't really think about the lyrics at all. They appreciate the music itself more. I mean, songs are very personal. We all relate to them in different ways based on the memories that we have tied to them. I don't know. What do you think? Let's have a great discussion below about some of these songs. What do you think? Do you think these are taboo songs? What other songs are taboo that can't be covered anymore? Tell us below. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.